Hello there. Sorry, I'm Bradford Sherman, and along with Christie Welch, the Direct Food and Agricultural Marketing Specialist. And Christie, here on Marketing Matters today, we're going to talk about something. Do you want to guess what it is? I'm going to give you a hint. I'm going to give you a big hint. Oh!
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the rain right after this. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, we're back, and Christie, we've had so much rain, it seems like. Now, the last couple of days, it's been kind of hot and maybe, getting more like summer, but it just seems like for the longest time there, it was just rain, 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 rain. Do you have any idea how much over average we've been getting of the rain?
Yes, I do. I was just watching the news here the other day, Brad, and we are 8 inches above normal for this year. Okay. So it's been way more rain than we'd like to see.
Right. Well, it seemed like 8 inches. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's a lot. Yeah. So, I'm not a farmer. I'm not really a crops guy. But you always hear rain, good for the crops. But I guess there's a situation in which you can just have too much rain, and then what happens then? Is it a situation where it just stunts the growth of the crops, or does it kill them altogether? Does it lead to disease? What does too much rain do? Well,
that's a great question, Brad. And so this year, probably one of the things that's affected a lot of farmers here, especially in Ohio, well, throughout the Midwest, is the fields are so wet they can't even get their equipment into the field to plant. Mm-hmm. So we think about we might get aggravated because it's too wet to go out and mow our lawns. And you stop and think about, when you do that, how your lawnmower, your little lawn tractor, can make ruts in your lawn. So then you need to think about multiplying the weight of a large tractor and getting out into fields that are just soaked with water. It just is not doable. The tractors will leave ruts, if not get stuck. The seeds won't get planted correctly at the right depth, at the right spacing. And then the other problem, even if you were to get out there and get those seeds in the ground, a lot of times it's so wet that instead of that seed sprouting and growing, it will lay there and rot. My husband and I have a very small farm, and we planted some pumpkins here a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And had to go back through just last night and replant. And as we were doing that, we noticed that the seeds that did not come up, it was because it was too wet and they just laid in the ground there and rotted. And of course, when they do that, you have no crop.
Right. Okay. Well, are there obviously, when you have a problem with a seed rotting, I mean, that affects almost everything. But is there any particular crops that get more that are more affected negatively by excess rain than others, or is it just everything?
Well, I think this year it's pretty much everything, because a lot of the issue is not being able to plant at all, just mm-hmm. because the ground is too wet. Now, we deal with our direct marketing team, deal a lot with specialty crop producers, so fruits and vegetables and those kinds of things. And so when we have a season like this year, even when you're able to get your crops out in the ground, with all the moisture, lack of sunshine, high humidity, that leads to another whole host of problems with those crops. They don't get enough sunshine, they're not going to grow well. With all the rain and humidity, that leads to more disease pressure for those crops. So it's just going to be a really challenging year for all of our farmers this year. And again, if you stop and think about, if you had a job mm-hmm. where you got paid once a year for a crop that you produce, and when you're not able to produce that crop, we're going to have some farmers out there that are not going to have income or much of any this year at all. So it's really a dire situation for our farmers.
Are there any programs or anything that can help producers, farmers in the event that something like this happens and it wipes out their crops? I mean, are there things like that to help them?
Well, that's a great question too, Brad. And so I do not deal much with the grain farms, the field corn and soybeans and those kinds of things. Now, through the federal farm bill, there are some programs that might help them a little bit. But when I deal, again, our team deals more with specialty crops crops. So we're talking again fruits and vegetables. The availability to take advantage of insurance for specialty crops is very, very limited. And so if you're able to, first of all, get specialty crop insurance, which again is through a federal program, typically it only will pay to cover the cost of maybe planting a crop. So it, again, is still, it helps our specialty crop growers, but again, that's very limited.
Okay, so we've had all this rain, and we have farmers that are unable to get the production that they're used to. Obviously, this is going to be a problem that trickles down all the way to the consumer. Are we going to see situations in which we're going to see fewer farmers markets popping up and fewer things available at them? I mean, what's going to be the fallout from all this rain? What's it going to look like?
Well, that's a really good question as well, and I don't think we'll see fewer farmers markets, but I do think you might see less abundance at some of those farmers markets. Now, one of the things that I think it's important for our producers to remember to do is to really communicate with our customers. We still need to eat, and so we still are going to have access to food. And so if it's a situation where there's a crop or several crops that you produce that this year, for whatever reason, typically the rain, whether you can't get it planted or you planted and it rotted in the field or you have disease issues, you can certainly look to other producers around the region. Although the Midwest as a whole has been really affected, it might be a situation where you're going to have to look at other produce from other parts of the region to still be able to supply products to your customers, because again, we still need to eat. My suggestion, if you do that though, is to be very transparent with your customers and help them understand if you're offering products that you didn't produce or wasn't produced here in Ohio, to really clearly talk to them about why you're offering that product due to the rain, due to the limited supply here in Ohio, and be very transparent with your customers.
Now, I know you're a marketing specialist, and obviously if someone comes to you and wants to, you can tell them that face to face, but what are some other ways that maybe they can communicate with the customers and kind of get the word out about, maybe some uses, maybe some unconventional channels that maybe they haven't had to use? Can you talk a little bit about getting that out? Absolutely.
That's a great question, Brad, as well. And so one of the really easy things you can do, especially at farmers markets, is just put up signs. Say that these tomatoes happen to be from Kentucky, and maybe they're not our tomatoes. And that should prompt your consumers to ask questions about that. The other thing, of course, with social media being as prevalent as it is, which can be a blessing and a curse, but it's really a great way to help your customers, again, understand the impacts that this weather has had on us. Some friends of mine have a farm where they do mostly field crops, so corn, soybeans, that kind of thing. And through their Facebook page here a couple weeks ago, I saw they planted a picture that was taken that date last year, and the corn was about above my head. And on the same date this year, she was holding a seed of corn in her hand because it had been too wet to get in the field to even plant that corn. And I think visuals like that can really help our customers better understand the effects the weather is having on us. Because again, as a general public, we're so removed from food production, we just don't understand some of these things sometimes. And so to really help to educate your customers about how this weather is impacting farmers is very beneficial.
I know the picture you're talking about. In fact, I saw it on social media. I can't remember which it was on. Maybe it was on Reddit or something. I hardly ever use Facebook, but I was trying to find that picture before we came on because I thought that would be a really telling thing to pop up there. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And because I kind of feel like I'm one of those people that's kind of removed from it. I don't exactly understand about how all the production works and everything. So speaking maybe for the type of folks like myself, you go to the grocery store, are you going to be seeing higher prices on the produce and the vegetables and the fruits and everything as a result of all this? And maybe scarcer amounts, or obviously, like you said, not the kind that you're used to. Can you talk about what it's going to be like for the average Joe going to a grocery store? It's going to be higher prices.
Well, I would certainly anticipate price increases in food in the coming months. I think it's a little bit too early to tell for sure, but if you look at the national media, well, not only are we affected here in the Midwest, but places like Florida and California, where a lot of our specialty crops, our fruits and vegetables are produced, have had weather issues as well. And so, again, it goes back to that supply and demand. And anytime the demand is high, because, again, our consumers really want to know where our food is produced and how it's produced and who it's producing it. So when we have that high demand for locally produced foods and a short supply, it just makes sense that prices will increase. And let's also keep in mind, too, as a producer, if I typically sell 100 bushels of tomatoes, and this year I've only got maybe 50 bushels of tomatoes, and so my income basically has been cut in half. In addition to that, if you're able to find other producers where you can buy some of these products, you're not going to make the margin on those products typically either, because you're paying somebody else for that product as opposed to what you normally would produce yourself. So I do think that at some point, and I'm not an economist, so don't hold me to this, but indications at this point is that at some point we will see an increase in food costs down the road. Okay.
And this is probably it's going to sound like a really stupid question, but I specialize in those sometimes. Is it too late? In other words, like let's say the weather straightens up and we start seeing more normal weather patterns like we're used to. Can things kind of get turned around, or are we at a point now where because we had so much rain at the beginning of the season that now all of our production is shot and we're going to feel that effect all the way through, or is there still hope that this can get turned around?
Well, I think there's always hope. In the farming community, you can't put a plant in the ground and be hopeful, and just in general, I think most farmers are optimistic. So I would say that it depends a lot on the crop that you're producing. So for example, I mentioned that my husband and I had to go replant some pumpkins. Well, the pumpkin seeds that we have are about 100 days to maturity, which means from the time we put it in the ground, if it grows correctly, it's about 100 days until we have a pumpkin that then we can offer to our consumers. So if we start thinking about this being almost 1st of July, so if we can still get pumpkins in the ground fairly quickly, and they're a typically 100 or less day, then we still have July, August, September to hopefully have a mature crop by the October demand, which really is when pumpkins are in demand. It gets earlier and earlier every year. But the other thing that we have to take into consideration as well is when we get into the fall, well, what's the frost date? Because some of these specialty crops, again, are very sensitive to frost. So if we're not going to have a crop until after our frost date in the fall, then it's just kind of a gamble to see how that happens. So I'd say that producers really need to pay attention to the maturity of the crops that they're planting and how long it takes for them to get there.
Okay. Well, really interesting stuff, Christie. I don't know what else we can talk about. We always talk about the weather, and I don't know what else we can say about the weather. Yeah. Is there anything else on this topic that you think that you want to get out, get the word out to people who may be watching?
Well, I would just stress again to those that are watching, whether you're a producer or a consumer, to really try to communicate effectively, and we have so many tools to do that. We talked about pictures is a good way to do that. We can also use short video clips and just walk somebody around the farm and help them understand what it's like now. I mean, we try to encourage our producers to build a library of photographs of their operations and even a video library. So if you have some great pictures from last season of where your crop was and then take one from this season, again, that just really helps, I think, the consumer to visualize the impacts that these are having.
Well, when you talked about, you mentioned letting people walk around your farm, that kind of reminded me, I know you're doing a lot with agritourism right now. Could diversifying what you offer by, doing some agritourism and stuff like that? Can that help offset, hey, I got a bad crop this year. Maybe there's some other things I can do like the agritourism.
That's a great point and a great question too, Brad. We are seeing that many of our specialty crop producers and farmers in general, when they add agritourism enterprises to their operations, it brings in another stream of income. It's another outlet for some of the products that they may have. And it's just, again, a great way to bring the general public into our actual production agriculture facility to help them understand the impacts of the weather and how these things are produced.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're just about out of time. Appreciate you educating us on, especially me, because I don't know a whole lot about this stuff, and there are probably some other folks out there watching who can say the same. I was not aware of all the logistical challenges that a lot of times the farmers will face as a result of this rain, and I guess let's just hope for some more normal weather, so I don't have to carry this umbrella around all the time.
Yep.
And and maybe everything we'll get some mature crops by the time it's time to harvest.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for watching Marketing Matters, and we will see you next time. Hey, welcome back to Marketing Matters. Christie, in your role as direct marketing and agricultural specialist, I think one of the most exciting areas you're working on right now is agritourism. Yep. It's a great way to diversify your offerings at your farm or your winery or just whatever kind of operation you have. And let's say that I want to start offering agritourism at my farm. I don't have a farm, but let's say I did.
Okay.
What are some of the things that I need to consider before going forward and trying to do something like that?
Well, that's a great question, Brad, and we do get that question quite a bit. And so the first and foremost, I would think, typically when we have farms, we're farm families. We're not an individual person. And so I think the first place to start is with the family and all those involved in the farm and find out what their goals are. Because I will tell you, it's a lot different being out in the field tending to plants and animals than it is to dealing with the general public. And so you really need to just make sure that everybody's on board and wants to interact in that manner with our customers and potential customers.
Who's ornery, the animals or the general public?
It depends on the day.
Okay. Well, what are some of the most popular forms of agritourism? Obviously, sometimes you can just bring people in to tour the farm, but then you can also have activities for them to do, things like that, right?
Yep.
Can you kind of speak on what exactly you can do?
Well, very good. Well, I would think here in Ohio and really in a lot of places, one of the most popular activities is the fall pick your own pumpkins. And that really has grown over the years to not only do you go out and you pick your pumpkin, but you can take a wagon ride at the farm. People have corn mazes, where you can walk through and solve clues and try to make your way through that maze. And farmers have really just added so many different events and activities. Sometimes there are petting zoos. Sometimes there are jumping pillows. Sometimes there are slides that you can go down. So it's really designed to bring the general public onto a farm, help educate them again about how food is produced, but at the same time having them have that fun experience. Here in Ohio, one of the things that's included in our agritourism law that was passed here several years ago, pick your own operations, which people don't often think of as an agritourism destination, but it really is. And so you can go pick your own vegetables, your own apples, cherries, peaches, pumpkins, all those kinds of things. And one of the things I think that we have found is just such an eye-opening, enjoyable experience for the general customer that doesn't typically get to spend time on the farm. So that's been a really good way for producers to add agritourism to their operations.
Wow, yeah, it sounds really easy. I mean, it's kind of stuff that you would maybe let them do anyway. But my kids, I remember we were taking a vacation. We passed through Amish country, and this was so cool because they had all these animals that the kids could walk through and pet and everything, and they loved it. I can imagine that would be a great thing for people trying to attract families with small children. They would really appreciate that. Now, one thing that kind of runs through my mind is, what about the liabilities and stuff when you bring people onto your farm? What do you have to do? You have to have insurance, and probably a lot of hoops to jump through with that, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's, again, really good to think about what risks you're inviting or what risks are present on that operation. And so, again, the state of Ohio has an agritourism law that provides some protections, but I would say that insurance is your most valuable asset to make sure that you are properly insured based on the activities that you have on that farm that you're letting your customers come and participate in. So definitely have a conversation with your insurance provider.
Okay. And, I do the newsletter here at South Centers, and our cover story in the spring was about a conference you held about agritourism, and I was amazed at the interest that this had drawn. I think you had around 100 people, which I thought was phenomenal. Can you talk a little bit about just how popular agritourism is getting? And I think it was evident from the conference that you held, the workshop or conference, whatever it was.
Well, again, from the farmer's perspective, it's very interesting because, again, it helps us to diversify our income stream and provide some off-season income for producers. But you do have to think through that process. That is an annual conference that we do, and so we'll be offering that again in 2020. We're in the planning stages for that now. But if you'd like more information about our team or adding agritourism to your farm, the contact information for our program is below.
Okay. Well, excellent, Christie, and I'm sure a lot of people will be excited and will contact you about that and try to find out more. So until next time, in the next topic, we'll see you. Thanks for watching Marketing Matters.
Thank you.
Hey, we're back here on Marketing Matters with Christie Welch, Direct Marketing and Agricultural Specialist here at the Ohio State University South Centers. I'm Bradford Sherman. Christie, this November, I understand you have a very exciting two-day conference coming up, and it's going to be aimed at managers of farmers markets. Would you like to talk a little bit about what's going to be going on at that conference?
I'd love to talk about that, Brad. I appreciate you asking about it. I'm very excited about this. It's going to be a two-day workshop in November, located in Columbus, and the whole goal of this two-day workshop for farmers market managers is to help them develop a sustainability plan. Well, you might ask, why does a farmer's market need a sustainability plan?
Why does a farmer's market need a sustainability plan?
Very good. Well, over the last couple of years, we're finding locally produced foods in more market channels. So not only is it available at a farmer's market, but a lot of grocery stores, specialty stores are now offering locally produced foods. And if we put our customer head on and not our market manager or our farmer head on, what's very important to customers?
Convenience.
Convenience, absolutely. Now, I challenge farmers markets all the time to say, how convenient is it for a family that has 3 kids that play soccer on Saturday mornings to get up and go to the farmer's market on Saturday morning to buy their local produce?
Right, good point.
And so what we're trying to do with this training is to help these market managers think about what's their consumer base going to look like 5 years from now, or possibly even 10 years from now. Farmers markets are much more than just the local food. It's a community. It's been very helpful for small producers. It's also been very helpful for communities to really form those connections. So I don't see that they're going to go away, but we're really excited about this training. We have experts from the Cornell Cooperative Extension in Broome County, New York, as well as folks from Grow New York City. That's the organization that manages the green markets in New York, coming to help train our market managers on developing that sustainability plan.
you talk about convenience, and whenever my wife and I, we have 2 small kids, whenever we go to a farmer's market, one of the biggest things is we don't have cash on us or something. We might only have a card, or like I love to pay with my phone. I love to use Apple Pay, and also there's Google Pay and Samsung Pay, the contactless payments. So you see people with the square readers sometimes, but not everybody has that. So is that something you might talk about at your conference, trying to get people to maybe kind of tech it up and maybe make it more convenient to pay for stuff?
Absolutely, and that's another thing that we stress with our producers anyway, is don't make it hard for your customers to give you money.
Make it easy. Take my money.
Easy. And so that would certainly be a part of that sustainability plan. What's that going to look like, again, 5 or 10 years from now? If you stop and think about 10 years ago, the ability to take payments out in the middle of a field or at a farmer's market with a smart device was very limited. And so technology is changing so quickly that we really need to think about that.
Right, and I hope they do, because I want to buy some of this stuff.
That's
Make
right.
it easy. I don't care. I lose cash if I carry it.
That's right.
My wife don't let me carry it. So anyway, about this conference, do you have a lot of the details worked out about how much it's going to cost and where people need to go to register and everything like that?
So we're still in the planning stages. So we do have work to still be done on that. I will tell you that thanks to some funding that our program has, it's going to be free of charge.
Oh, that's great.
For our farmers market managers to hold the conference. And so, but it will be in Columbus on November the 11th and 12th. It's a 2-day workshop. And so please, if you want more information, you can see the contact information on the screen below, and reach out to us or watch for that information coming out. It's going to be a great workshop.
Okay, well, sounds very exciting, and I'm sure that as the date draws closer, you're going to have even more information to share with everybody, and I'm sure that they can check out the website to kind of keep updated with that, and also social media.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, well, I believe, is there anything else you want to say about this event coming up, or anything at all?
No, not really. We're just very excited about it, and we're also partnering with the Ohio Farmers Market Network to bring that to Ohio. So if you have questions, you can again either contact us at the bottom of your screen, or check out the Ohio Farmers Market Network, and they'll have their information there as well.
All right. Thanks a lot, Christie. You've been watching Marketing Matters. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.